Denver's mayor defies his critics by extending the city's use of license plate tracking cameras. Tonight, new research raises questions about the mayor's big claims.
What evidence did they examine to arrive at such a bold assertion?
Attorney General Phil Weiser becomes the most prominent Democrat to say that Colorado should redraw its congressional maps to box out Republicans if the GOP does it elsewhere.
If other states are allowed to get this unfair advantage and we sit idly by, then we're enabling that behavior.
And we remember when the Rockies once played baseball this time of year, led to a chance meeting between two people who later became colleagues at 9 News. That's tonight on Next. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston is unilaterally extending the use of license plate tracking cameras in the city over the concerns of city council and community members worried about privacy and whether the feds are using them for immigration enforcement. But the mayor is making some big claims that are not backed up by the latest research. Our Spencer Soysher explains.
There has never been a single migrant in the city and county of Denver who's ever been identified or detained because of flock, period, full stop. Anyone that says differently is lying.
Denver Mayor Mike Johnston yesterday backed up his decision to sign a new contract with Flock all on his own, arguing the city shouldn't turn off its valuable crime-solving cameras over fears of something that's never happened.
Anyone that says differently is lying.
It's perplexing that he would preemptively accuse others of lying when he himself appears to be saying things for which he would lack evidence.
Angelina Godoy is a professor at the University of Washington.
There's no way to follow this trail.
Just this week, her team at the Center for Human Rights released a study examining access and abuse of Flock's system.
To be honest, we started looking at it because of your reporting.
The Washington report highlights two issues with tracking outcomes. One, Flock's system doesn't provide a way to track what happens after someone runs a search in Flock's database.
And the second reason is that ICE's own publicly available documents, or even privately available documents, like the records that they issue in cases where they apprehend someone, don't provide that level of detail of how they actually located the person.
Johnston actually made the never happened claim to us during 3 separate answers.
There has never been a single migrant in the city and county of Denver who's ever been identified or detained because of flock. That have never happened in Colorado. A privacy risk that has never happened in this city before.
The mayor's office doubled down in a statement today, writing, "We deal in evidence and facts. And the fact is, we have no evidence that Denver's data has ever been used for the purposes of civil immigration enforcement, and anyone who tells you otherwise is not being truthful." There's no known evidence of that. But there's also no evidence.
No.
His comments were a fact.
It would be impossible to prove the statement that the mayor appears to be making.
That University of Washington study found in that state found what we found here on Next. Police departments were directly sharing access to their data with immigration agents, whether they knew it or not. Their study is just a few days old, but it has already prompted police departments to re-examine their policies and prompted the governor of Washington to ask for an investigation into compliance with the state's immigration law.
I feel like I should have asked this question 6 months ago. But is there a competitor to Flock that might have like somewhat similar technology, but without the history they have? Some company called like Swarm or Horde or Throng or something like that?
Bird-like.
So some knockoff of Flock.
So I asked the mayor's office today because they mentioned yesterday that, hey, maybe if they don't like it, we could try a different competitor, somebody else, a different one that maybe doesn't have this history. They said, but there's also a concern there that everybody else has Flock at this point. It's like you're the one person with an Android phone. All your texts are green going to the people with the iPhone. Will they talk to each other?
Right. Flock clearly has cornered the market. All right. Spencer Soysher, thank you. Attorney General Phil Weiser, who's running for governor, is calling for Colorado to join the redistricting battle between red states and blue states. Weiser's offering his support for the first time in today's Next conversation. He's the most prominent Democrat in Colorado to say that Colorado should redraw its congressional maps to favor Democrats if Republicans are going to follow President Trump's direction and create more GOP seats in red states.
I'd like to see us, and we have to change our Constitution to do this, a break glass in case of emergency. If you see other states breaking the norm, doing mid-decade redistricting, give a mechanism so that we can match it. And the important thing, by the way, is by creating the possible mechanism, we also create a deterrent effect. It will only happen if we need to because other states are doing it. Colorado can wait if other states wait. But if other states are moving ahead, we shouldn't put ourselves on the sidelines. We need to do our part.
At President Trump's direction, Republican states, Texas, Missouri, North Carolina, are gerrymandering their maps to favor the GOP in the 2026 midterms. Democrats in California are currently asking voters for permission to respond in kind. And Democrats in Virginia signaled today that they will also redraw maps to counteract Trump's plan. Colorado's House delegation is currently 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Weiser is calling for Coloradans to join him in supporting a constitutional amendment in November of next year. That would allow the Democrat-controlled legislature to redraw the district lines for 2028 and 2030. To do it that way, instead of Colorado's voter-approved, independent, nonpartisan redistricting.
We got to be ready to do our part, because if you end up with only one party doing mid-cycle redistricting and the other party doesn't, that's actually a threat to democracy. I want to keep this as a one-time exception, allowing mid-cycle redistricting to match when it's been done in kind, and really do all we can to get back to normalcy. And Cal, this is a problem of the Trump era that we're in right now. We're breaking norm after norm after norm. The work is going to be, how do we reset our norms? How do we reset our democratic institutions? I'm in for that work.
Is this an acknowledgement, though, on your part that in order to compete with Trump and Republicans, Democrats have to behave more like Trump and Republicans?
We have to recognize that we're living in the real world, and we can't ignore what's happening on the ground.
You acknowledge that gerrymandering is bad for voters.
Yes.
Right? It's bad for democracy.
Yes.
It's bad for the function of our government. Those would be harms that would be done to Coloradans if this were to come to pass. And it would be done largely to Coloradans who are on the right side of the spectrum, who would lose representation that matches their values. Why is it worth it to do that harm to Coloradans because of something happening out of state?
Let me offer a very important kind of corrective. I'm talking about mid-cycle redistricting in Colorado. If you look at our state fairly, I don't think you would draw a 4-4 map. We are a bluer state. Jared Polis won his election by 19 points. If we were to redistrict in a way that's more consistent with how voters vote, we're not going to be a 4-4 state.
And is the thought Colorado can deliver 1 more blue seat or 2 more blue seats or 3 more blue seats? That feels like a fair question, right?
Yeah, I don't have a plan for what the map should look like. I don't have a prediction of how many seats. But I do have a conviction that if other states are breaking this norm and other states are doing mid-cycle redistricting, we can't be on the sidelines.
We get deep into the details of this and the ethics of this in my full unedited conversation with Phil Weiser. You can find that on 9news.com and the Next YouTube channel. I should mention, Weiser's opponent in the 2026 Democratic gubernatorial primary, Senator Michael Bennet, has said that he supports Democrats drawing new maps in California, but he has not said anything about Colorado. 2 Democrats from Colorado's congressional delegation are asking the Trump administration to reject a mega media merger that would put the parent company of Fox 31 in charge of 9 News. Congressman Joe Neguse and Senator Michael Bennet wrote to the FCC that this deal would have, quote, devastating consequences for Colorado. Neguse and Bennett are asking the FCC to reject the acquisition of Tegna, the parent company of 9 News, by Nexstar, the owner of Fox 31, Channel 2, that also happens to be the largest owner of TV stations in America. If approved, this combined company would be able to reach more than 80% of TV households in America, and that is double the current limit allowed under federal law. Neguse and Bennett say the current cap, among other things, retains journalism jobs. They wrote that, quote, without it, our media coverage will become more nationalized and local coverage will decrease. Bennett and Neguse also raised concern that the Trump administration is using the FCC approval process as a tool to exert political pressure on broadcasters. Last month, the FCC chair threatened regulatory action against ABC over comments made by late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. Nexstar then pulled Kimmel's show off its stations, drawing praise from the head of the FCC. The king of Park Hill is in a mountain of trouble. Chauncey Billups, local basketball legend turned NBA veteran turned NBA coach, has been arrested in a federal investigation into sports betting and rigged poker games. Investigators say Billups, head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers these days, used his celebrity status to attract high rollers to poker games in Vegas, Miami, New York. Games that investigators say were backed by the mob. The feds say that rigged card shuffling machines and X-ray card tables were then used to cheat players out of $7 million. Chauncey Billups faces money laundering and wire fraud conspiracy charges, and the NBA says he's on leave. Billups has deep ties to Colorado. He graduated from George Washington High School in Denver in 1995. He went on to play for CU before the Boston Celtics selected him 3rd overall in the 1997 NBA draft. He hopped around the NBA for nearly 2 decades, including 2 stints with the Denver Nuggets. He also is the executive director of the Porter Billups Leadership Academy. That is a college prep program for students in underserved parts of Denver. A Colorado Republican who tends to stay out of the spotlight goes under the bright lights of CNN to defend President Trump's White House demolition.
It's pretty small. It's not particularly architecturally significant.
There's Jeff Hurd, everybody. Haven't seen him in the longest. And the Rockies World Series hopes ended in 2007. But it was actually the start of a beautiful friendship for 2 of our colleagues here. Remembering a chance meeting. Next. Republican Congressman Jeff Hurd's a pretty reserved guy, certainly not an attention seeker. So it's kind of wild to see him pop up under the bright lights on CNN, offering a vigorous defense of all things, President Trump's abrupt demolition of the East Wing of the White House to build himself a gilded ballroom. As of this morning, the entire East Wing of the White House has been demolished, without any kind of advance notice, public input, or approval from any of the government agencies that oversee construction on federal buildings. The East Wing held 2 stories of offices and drawing rooms that included the offices for first ladies and their staff. Trump says the East Wing, quote, was never thought of being much, and it stood in the way of his plans for the construction of a $300 million ballroom, which is being funded, he says, by private donors and himself. Well, last night, Colorado's Congressman Jeff Hurd came in like a wrecking ball, arguing that this East Wing is just a modern addition and shouldn't even be considered part of the White House.
It's the middle of the night. They are bulldozing the White House in the middle of the night.
Let's be clear, it's not the White House that's being bulldozed. It's the East Wing of
Which is part of the White
complex.
House.
But it's much newer. There was a part of it that was built in the late 19th century
right?
and then renovated in the 1940s. It's pretty small. It's not particularly architecturally significant, at least from what I know, and this is an opportunity. Look, the president is a builder.
When asked about the sudden demolition this week, White House spokesperson said everybody just needs to trust the process. Congressman Hurd trusts the process. I trust meteorologist Chris Bianchi. It's a shame that you don't want to get into politics, Chris, because I trust you there too.
I'll stop, Kyle. The East Wing of Colorado, though, on the dry side right now, it's the west side that's dealing with all the rain and the snow right now, including out here in Ouray, where we're seeing some of that rain, and you get up there a little bit in elevation, mostly at or above 10,000 feet. That's where we're seeing those snowflakes fly. Look at this from Kim. That is an ominous-looking view for our friends out there in eastern Las Animas County, where we're seeing some thunderstorms right now. So a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow for us, mostly here in the southern western part of the state. In Denver, we are dry right now. But in the San Juans, we are seeing some snow. Again, this is mainly at or above 10,000 feet. I was just looking at some of the webcams from Telluride. Looks like it's all rain in town there at about 9,000 feet. Further north, we're seeing some snow for us here along the I-70 corridor. And then further off towards the south, there's some of those rumbles of thunder, including the Kim area. Seeing some of those showers and storms right now. Next few hours, some showers may spin their way into Denver. Better chance for a shower west or south of Denver. And then a quick hit of snow for us in the mountains tonight before that spins on out of here later on tomorrow. 7-day forecast temperatures, 60s, 70s next few days. Brief cool down for tomorrow. Next chance for rain comes early next week with the cool down as well, with highs in the 50s next Tuesday.
Remember when the Rockies were good at baseball? Gather round, children. Let me tell you a story of the olden days. Actually, our Kevin Vaughn will tell the story of the Rockies World Series run and a young super fan that I guarantee you will recognize. Hey, a reminder, you can catch Next streaming each weeknight, 6 p.m., 9 News Plus, and we are now a podcast for your ear holes. Major League Baseball World Series starts tomorrow, and the Rockies were this close, and then the season started, and that dream died quickly as the Rockies put together a historically awful year. It's been nearly 20 years since the Rocks' one and only World Series run in 2007. Our Kevin Vaughn was there covering Rocktober, and he had an unlikely encounter with another 9 Newser, though he couldn't have known it at the time.
Chris, we've worked together 5 years, but just recently we figured out, do we have a connection that goes back much farther than back to the fall of 2007. I was a reporter at the Rocky Mountain News. What were you doing in the fall of 2007?
I was a junior at Boston University, and I was a diehard Colorado sports fan.
Specifically, on October 23rd, 2007, where were you and what were you doing?
I was sleeping on the streets of Lansdowne Street in Boston. This is behind the Green Monster if you're a baseball fan. I was sleeping there because I was trying to get tickets to Game 1 of the World Series, got into Games 1 and 2 of the World Series.
I was assigned to cover the Rockies from their tiebreaker game against the San Diego Padres on October 1st until it ended, and eventually it took me to Boston, where I was looking for Rockies fans to write stories about, and I came across these 3 crazy dudes who were sleeping on the sidewalk trying to get tickets, and it turns out one of those crazy dudes was you.
It was me. My parents both immigrated to Denver a few years before I was born, ended up moving to New York right before I was born for work reasons. But point being, my parents always had they got married in Denver, they loved Denver, loved Colorado, honeymooned, everything there in Colorado. So they always spoke really highly of Colorado. And so when I was deciding my sports teams growing up, I just kind of latched onto the Colorado thing because of my parents.
You bought the tickets, you got into the game, I followed you in. And I have to ask you about this picture of you holding up this sign. Holiday lifts weights, Poppy lifts cakes. I mean, if this meteorologist thing doesn't work out, I think you've got a future as a sign maker, personally.
Talk about the most 19-year-old kid sign. Spoiler alert, that did not turn out great, as I think Jeff Francis, the Rockies Game 1 starter, got absolutely rocked in that game.
You know, you were bummed out, but you said to me, I'll always be able to stay. I was at the first World Series game in Rockies history.
Zero regrets, absolutely, whatsoever about sleeping on the street for those games. I was a real diehard fan, and so that whole month, that Rocktober, was so fun. That was so fun. I mean, yes, it ended the way it did, but it was just such a blast to be a part of. That'll go down probably still as a lifetime top 3 sports memory for me.
Well, that was a lot of fun, and talking to you about this has been a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. It's been a blast. I appreciate it.
Hey, guys.
Kyle?
That is so cool. When did you put this together, that you had this connection?
About 3 weeks ago, I was having dinner with
serious?
a friend
3 weeks ago?
talking about Rocktober. He says, hey, get some of your stories and send them to me. I'd like to read them. He doesn't live here. And I went home that night and I was looking and I'm like, Chris Bianchi? And then I had to wait till the next day to dig out the actual paper and see the photo, and then I knew.
And you said a cryptic text going, hey, you should come over here. And then came over here and was like, oh my goodness. It was one of those expletive-laden sort of conversations.
You remembered being interviewed.
Yes, I do remember that. I remember being interviewed. I was interviewed by so many people that week because I was the only Rockies fan. I was literally the only one sleeping out on the streets of Lansdowne Street. So I did interviews with Japanese TV, South Korean TV. I seriously did so many interviews. And in fact, I got in trouble because of that, because some of these interviews went on local Boston TV and I was skipping class.
That's great stuff. I love that you just put it together. Thank you both. We'll be right back. JD doesn't like Phil Weiser's idea that Colorado should be redistricted at the congressional level based on Governor Polis winning by 19%. He says, totally ridiculous assertion. Some conservatives I know, including myself, supported Polis. Well, JD, ultimately, Colorado voters will decide whether they want to approve this constitutional change. And a much more fair way, if they were going to redraw, is probably total percentage in congressional races, not what one man got in a race.